Courtney.
Great, thanks. Hi, Angelique. Thanks for joining us. I'm a huge fan of the brand as someone who loves to shop but never seems to have time to actually make it into stores, or, I'm also not great at putting outfits together. Absolutely love the brand, so happy to connect today. Just want to kind of jump in. I know that Stitch Fix has a very unique and kind of all-encompassing strategy to social and influencer marketing. So I'd love if you give a little bit of background on kind of your approach to everything and how your different streams of work function.
Yeah, that's a great starting point for us. So I definitely take the long-term approach when it comes to influencer marketing. You'll see a lot of brands taking the one and done route, which is hyper efficient when it comes to rapid growth, and also see that those brands, they'll cycle through influencer after influencer after influencer, and that could sometimes dilute the brand messaging or dilute the conversation that you want audiences to have with your brand and that target audience there. So from a long-term approach, I do tend to over-rotate into the quality over quantity and that long game in terms of just, becoming and building that brand partnership and that, genuine just person-to-person partnership with an influencer. In the same manner that influencers are more and more selective with the brands that they, tend to share messaging around, whether, if they are still doing one and done deals and just like cycle through, we're also seeing a trend happen where a lot of influencers are being more selective. Like, does this fit with my niche? Does this fit with what my audience has come to see and appreciate? From my standpoint, I take that same approach for the brand. So I do want to protect our brand reputation when partnering with influencer partners. And again, in that long-term approach of like long-term partnership and building that relationship with them, I also tend to be as selective. So instead of doing, going through multiple and high volume influencers, I'll select a few and have them be kind of our go-tos, whether that's for a month, for a season, for a year, or even for longer term. I do, though, that being said, I do have multiple streams of influencer work. So back into the long-term approach, there's two approaches that are ambassador-based. One is ambassadors for seasonal trends, merchandise, new apparel, clothing, accessories that comes in. We definitely want to have that at the forefront of our marketing assets, of our social assets, and for our community. So that will be one way that we lean into our ambassadors. And those are the same people that you'll see, over the course of a year and beyond, reoccurringly. And that also ensures that, from a quality standpoint and from the engagement rate on their platforms, their audiences are very used to seeing our brand. They're used to expecting like, oh, what has Stitch Fix come out with for fall? I'm really excited to see what influencer X is going to be wearing, or influencer, A, B, C, or D. So that's kind of one route that we take. Another route that we take with ambassadors, I guess the second route, is a partnership with influencers, which is more brand reputation based. So not only do we use for that first, example that I gave, that is merchandise or trend based, but then on the flip side, we also use some of our ambassadors as our spokespeople. I think that's important just from a brand reputation management, being able to pitch them to press or have larger stories that are, Stitch Fix first, but then also influencer and consumer facing second. That will often be at play. So that's the second piece. The third piece is like always on business as usual, what you and I would refer to as evergreen influencer marketing. Again, it's not in the one and done deal type of or transactional way. It's like throughout a year, is it every week you're going to be slowly dripping messaging that is related to Stitch Fix? Will you be consistently building an audience that's, let's say, we're in fall, are we going to it's fall boots, things like that. So you'll come to expect those seasonal drops that are less about like big merch or big brand announcements, but rather always on. So that's the third piece. The fourth piece, or the fourth stream, and I know this is a lot, that we leverage influencer marketing for is content creation. So outside of leveraging influencers for their reach and for their audiences on their own channels, there's also a stream of work that I'm a huge fan of and have always leveraged in my career, but especially here at Stitch Fix, is leveraging them for content creators. So not only to also create and capture content for us, whether that's in a quick turn manner, if it's like, hey, I need this in 3 days, or if it's, okay, here's a brief for next month, I need these 5 assets, whether it's video, boomerang, quick turn, long form. So that's kind of like that fourth stream or that fourth pillar. Aside from that, we have experts come on. And so these are more in the celebrity route, where we aren't typically having them come on to share, big news or a big launch feature about our own brand, but it's rather in collaboration with them. It might be a big change that's happened in their life, and then how Stitch Fix has played a role. For example, thinking through of like soon to be mothers, their bodies are changing, their closets are changing. They'll come to Stitch Fix and they'll want to share that story and how their wardrobe has shifted and how Stitch Fix has aided them or helped them in that shift. So that's like a celebrity influencer route that we tend to use, and we tend to use it as much on our channels as it is on theirs. So more of like a high-level celeb spokesperson. And then, so that was 5. And then the last and final route is our internal employees. So our stylist ambassadors. We at Stitch Fix have about 2,000 stylists across the US that help style and curate fixes to go out to our clients. Yes, our algorithm helps, curate, because from a consumer standpoint, you'll put things in like price preference, brand and designer preference, all the way through, different styles and what you like. The algorithm will help curate that down, but then we actually have an actual human stylist that will go in and curate the 5 items that will be sent to you in your next fix, your next box. And so I leverage those internal employees, the stylists, as content creators and as influencers. And so they'll come and do takeovers on my channels. They'll speak to how they've, styled clients on their own channels, and then using them as that bridge and that gap, whether that's, beyond just social, but into growth, CRM, email marketing. So it is multiple streams of work. I love the space. I think, again, it's interesting because I caught the tail end of the previous conversation that was happening just before, where I think it was mentioned, like, what was Donald saying? Something along the lines of, I don't lean into influencers as a campaign itself. I consider them as part of a media buy. I think I do the exact opposite. I lean into influencers as the campaign itself, try to give my influencer campaigns larger legs, whether that's from a PR standpoint, celebrity standpoint, even being the face and voice for us in certain instances. So it is taking it from the flip side from what the previous kind of crew and conversation we're discussing, which is interesting.
Yeah. I love that you said kind of leaning into quality over quantity, because I think a lot of times, businesses are trying to define their strategy, where do influencers fit in, and you guys seem to have a very robust understanding of kind of they fit across every level. You have celebrity, you have content creators and brand ambassadors. And we've really seen from our side that having people that create quality content and have very, strong messaging that aligns with their personal brand and your brand is really impactful. And I think sometimes brands kind of move away from that and just want as many assets as possible, and it can kind of flood the market. But I think it's really impressive that you guys have kind of come to this holistic standpoint and understanding of what is going to be really effectual for your brand.
Yeah.
Obviously. Oh, go ahead.
Okay. No, I was just going to say, it's been a test and learn approach, right? It's not like we went all in from the get-go, but it's a slow test and learn, and the performance has been there. So it's proven successful so far.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Obviously, it goes without saying that things have changed this year dramatically, and influencers have become kind of a big part of everything that's going on. And what we've seen is this great growth in social. But what are some of the challenges that you guys have faced, and kind of how have you shifted your marketing strategy a little bit?
Yeah. Yeah. For all of us, the professional and personal level, specific to influencer marketing and larger marketing initiatives. I think the biggest shift that I've seen, not only at our brand, but throughout the industry overall, has been shifting away from the highly edited, highly glossy campaigns, and more so into native, social first look and feel of assets. So we're less, and consumers are looking for less of that perfection, but much more of that timeliness, especially with like much more time spent on social media since working from home, or since at the early start of quarantine. So it is much more of that less perfection, but much more timeliness. Consumers want to know how brands are responding to some of the social dialogue and injustice that's been happening, and it's we're waiting for it right away, and what's your stance, versus let me take 2 or 3 months to build it out, have a perfectly shot photo shoot by like a designer photographer, and then put it out so it's like glossy and perfect. It's not that anymore. We're trying to reach consumers, and most brands are trying to reach consumers where they are and at the time that they're there. It's weird because you used to be able to plan into marketing campaigns a lot more ahead of time than you are now. I feel like now you could plan something 3 or 4 months ahead of time, and that's not even a long time, right? That's not even a long lead time. But let's say you were to plan this season before for the following season, some of that messaging or some of that look and feel might not feel relevant anymore. If you're looking at talking about new platforms that are popping up, that are stemming and starting new trends, and whether that's like the music or the look and feel of what video is or what still is. If you shoot into something high and glossy, and 3 months later down the line, it might not even resonate with consumers anymore. So I think that's the biggest change that I'm seeing, is just that shift away from perfection and the opening up and peeling back the orange on, okay, let me, I want to see what's going on behind the scenes. What do you stand for? What are your values as a brand, and how insider to your content, as opposed to just a consumer?
Definitely. I like that you were saying, we've had this kind of growth of new platforms and people wanting to, I think, lean into a lot of storytelling to feel kind of empathy of what's going on. And, they are looking towards new platforms. Do you guys find that you're kind of exploring new platforms? Are there specific platforms that you guys always kind of run on and see a lot of benefit from?
Yeah. So I think some of our historical most performing platforms continuously top performers for us. It's not something we've moved away from, but of course, considering day in and day out, you cannot ignore new up and coming platforms that are changing the trends and changing them rapidly. So for us, for example, Instagram has always been a big community driver and a big place for that two-way conversation, but also sharing new launches, upcoming launches, product updates, service updates, anything like that. We're still continuing to see high performance on that standpoint, but what other platforms are doing is that they're merging and changing the trends and the way that we show up on that platform. So, we're excited and looking at opening up our presence on some of the new platforms, but we're still relying on places like Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, Pinterest that have been successful in the past because there has just been much more usage. And then, interestingly enough, although the trend of quick turn video has highly shifted what we're doing across, the platforms I just mentioned, and that quick turn and rapid movement and, musicality to them, and like dance moves as part of like showing what your outfit is. Those things have all shifted, but we've also come back and gone through to more mature platforms. So if you consider long form video like YouTube, I want to say that it has been a mature platform for us for quite some time, but we're at a place where we're seeing a resurgence of it, and that's because mentioning before, wanting to see and peel back that orange peel into like brand values and what you actually stand for and the commitments you're making. From having a really good place to share much more of a place to help not only explain what we're doing, but some of the commitments that we're making and how we're going about it, which has been of good interest and strong interest to consumers. So from that standpoint, I think it's interesting. You're seeing the resurgence or the up and coming, quick turn video coming, but then the resurgence of the need for long form storytelling that gets into much more detail. And again, not just specific to YouTube, but that can be used across channels, your IGTVs like Facebook Watch and whatnot, which is interesting. And from the influencer standpoint, it's been interesting to see that, yes, we've been using our influencer partners and those 6 streams that we kind of walked through at the beginning. But since March, not only have we leaned into quick turn video content and now this longer form video content, but we're also leaning into our influencers much more as content creators. So no matter where they fall in that like 6 streams of work that we run, I think that content creation is more and more important. Not to say more so than their reach and the engagement impressions that they have on their feeds, but being able to lean into our partners in that way and for them to show up and showcase, on diverse body shapes and sizes and ethnicities and skin tones and backgrounds and ages and genders has been really great because we already have that community of partners in our portfolio, just because of like the different streams that we always run. And being able to rely on them and lean into them in new ways because of what has shifted since March has really been like a blessing in the sense that we're still able to hit on performance metrics, but also, connect with our community in a new way now that feels even more so authentic on the channels that they're expecting to see us on.
Yeah, it's very interesting that you mentioned that because I think from our side, content creators were great to lean into, especially like right when March hit and people were scrambling and you can't create TV or digital assets as easy as you could. You could lean into content creators very quickly and still turn around extremely high quality content. And you're right, you can align it with different seasons or different, whether it's diverse segments or body positivity very quickly and still be in market and receiving those metrics. One other thing that you mentioned I thought was interesting was trends. So trends from both kind of the retail perspective, so fashion trends, as well as what we're seeing on different platforms. How important is kind of consumer research and leaning into trends for the brand?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that consumer trends and then platform trends are immensely important. Being able to formulate the different streams of work or the content that we're putting out based on data, based on insights that we're able to derive from that data, based on, this is trending on this platform from historical analysis of the last 2 weeks. We know that it's going to come here. So it's something that we should start looking into. Like all of those pieces of work have helped inform what we do. And then from just like an industry standpoint, not only channel or, social channel or influencer specific, but marketing overall, it's been interesting and exciting to see what our, other players in the market have been doing. That's been highly valuable. And it's been able to, we always keep a pulse on what other brands are doing just to see like how we position ourselves or how we differentiate ourselves. We do have a differentiated offering from the get-go, and so there isn't like a one-to-one competitor that we consider. But being able to understand the fashion industry overall and what's impacting the fashion industry or the trends that are changing there is always a good place for us to reference back and to create, whether it's net new messaging or net new campaigns around. What we've seen too is interesting because I think since March it's been, or even like, I want to say since March, I want to say since ever, but there's been an extra focus on what I mentioned earlier, like brand values. It's been interesting to watch, especially in the fashion industry, what I want to say competitors or other players in the industry have been doing. And normally, you would want to watch what other players are doing to like drive insights and then reformulate and repivot. In our case, I feel like there hasn't been enough that's been done values-based. The industry has been trying to shift from a fashion industry standpoint. And so it's almost like the opposite here, where we haven't necessarily gone out to listen to trends or insights, and we've almost have had to pave our own way when it comes to commitments that we've made, positioning that we've made, and how we're going forward. So it's been good to see that there hasn't, not good, but I mean, it's been interesting to see that there hasn't been anything similar to what we've been doing in the space when it comes to brand values and making commitments and continuously to make pledges against it, because we've been able to build our own path. So from that standpoint, it's been an interesting few months.
From a data perspective, does having all of this, analysis and analytics available, does that allow you to try new things? Have you guys done anything experimental this year?
Yes, we have done a lot of test and learn this year. I feel like, at the start of COVID, it was a place where, the campaigns that were set to launch don't feel relevant anymore. Thinking through spring campaigns in the clothing, apparel, fashion retail industry are tied towards like events, weddings, graduation, all things at the very start of spring. So being able to be nimble, bring that experimental mindset, that test and learn mindset, has been really valuable to us. It's actually created some new serialized content series that we have, and episodic content series that we now have. But the 2 or 3 that have proven really successful, like, we didn't just start there. We started with about 15, and being able to build into them, see how people and audiences and our consumers have reacted to them, pivoting almost in a real-time basis with two-way dialogue of like, oh, I love that you asked for my outfit, but I can't get great photos because I'm indoors. Like, oh, okay, show us your shoe fee instead. Like, what shoes are you wearing, or what is your above the keyboard look? Show us that. So we've been able to pivot, in real time, which has been, like, I want to say, scary and exciting for brands. I know that we're not the only ones in this boat, but being able to kind of pause or cancel baked in campaigns that had been planned, months and months ahead of time. Data has been our saving grace in this instance. It's helped us understand what's working, what's resonating with a small pivot or A/B test. Why did that work? Why did that not work? And then continues to push through, which now we have like 2 or 3 solid pieces of work that we'll continue to use, or episodic and serialized templates that we'll continue to use and build the content in and against, that if it were not for this experimental test and learn timing based on data, we would have never gotten to. So I think it's pushed us to be better, not only better marketers, but also, better in two-way conversation with our audiences overall.
I think that's really important. It's been really interesting to make sure that you're covering off on sentiment, and even, you're right, a lot of event content was planned out, or people were, trying to figure out whether or not, how do you change messaging to be sensitive? Do you include masks in content? How do you be safe? So it's been very interesting to kind of think through all of the challenges that content creators have right now, and making sure that you're putting out a message that is relevant but still sensitive to the time. So very interesting to hear. Also, do you find that there's like one segment? I know that you mentioned you guys have a number of different segments of work streams that you function across. Do you feel like there's one in particular that tends to be a great driver of any of the metrics on the back end, or do you feel that it really is leaning into that wholly encompassed, celebrity down to nano, down to brand ambassador level that is really functioning for the brand?
I think our influencer mix and being able to have the run gamut, there are different goals and objectives for each. And so if we're looking at like purely driving performance, that volume does help. Again, not in like one and done, but volume with like the number of ambassadors and the number of always on that are tried on, that has definitely helped. I do want to say though that because we've into 2,000 plus stats that we have, we've also been able to leverage and get great content from them. And so that's been at a place where it's not only performance or metrics driving, but it's also like a spokesperson and the face of the brand, because they are employees at the company. So leaning into that stream of work, the stylist ambassador work, if you will. That has proven great from a performance level, but also a brand kind of spokesperson piece as well.
And then kind of shifting gears, I was reading about when we kind of talked about your Elevate partnership that you guys recently announced with Harlem's Fashion Row. So I'd love if you could give a little bit of background and kind of discuss how that came to be.
Yes, yes, we're really, really proud of this initiative. So back in June, we made commitments to work towards a more diverse base within our own assortment and accept fostering Black, Indigenous, people of color, so BIPOC-owned businesses, creators, and influencers. Elevate has the mission of, through our approach of art and science, of funding businesses and giving them grants so that, we can slowly change the fashion industry and have a much more diverse set of vendors, designers. We partnered with Harlem's Fashion Row, so Brandis Daniel, the CEO and founder, to act as a oversight mentor throughout the program, and will help from everything from the selection phase that is open, by the way, right now. So applications close October 31st, and so if you or anyone that is a person of color, BIPOC, within the designer space and would like to apply, please apply. But that being said, partnering with Brandis Daniel from Harlem's Fashion Row for, ensuring representation, ensuring equality, ensuring that we're bringing a net new program through to life for these designers that feels just and representative of them. So we're really excited about that. It's net new program for us here at Stitch Fix. But feel that, in light of the commitments that we've made starting in June, and then also new commitments we made in August, this is just one of the very first pieces of the puzzle and steps that we're taking. And we're really proud of that because it will change our vendor base and the brands that we carry at Stitch Fix overall.
Yeah, I think that's, it's obviously really great right now. There's kind of a lack of good news. So always great when brands are, doing things to help, and especially I think there are so many great content creators that are persons of color, as well as people that are trying to get into the industry. So it's great to see the brand kind of help out those people. I know that we're getting kind of close to question time, so wanted to ask you one last question that we've been asking kind of throughout the day. But as we head into 2021, is there anything that you're looking forward to from both a work perspective as well as kind of a personal perspective?
Yeah, I love that question to end things for Q&A. I think from a professional perspective, and I've alluded to this, but I'm very excited about an upcoming platform and channel launch that we have that is in the quick turn video space. I'm excited about that because we've been playing in that space with our influencers, but haven't had our own brand presence. So this is something that we're really excited about. We've partnered with some really fun celebrity influencers to kick off that channel. And so looking forward to that the most. I think right now it's just top of mind. And then I think on the personal side of things, so I know you and I were chatting in our conversation just yesterday. I just moved. We just left the city, my family and I. We left San Francisco, and so we moved to be closer to the beach and just to be able to enjoy a bit more outdoor living during this time as we're still working from home. So I'm actually looking forward to being able to disconnect and just reconnect with nature in a way that I feel like I haven't done since March. We've been heads down and kind of just, especially in the social space and influencer space, there's been so much that has going on. It feels like everyone working in social can relate, where we've all been heads down, that first response. So I'm looking forward to just reconnecting with nature and taking on a slower pace of life as 2021 comes around, and this is now our new normal, as we're all tired of hearing.
I think that's a perfect summary of everyone that works in social, that it just, we were working all the time at the beginning, and I think it's great that now you do have the ability to kind of enjoy as much as you can, a little bit of, freedom and get away from things a little bit and be able to, have a bit more of balance.
Yeah.
Okay, I think we have a few questions. So the first question was, when working with influencers other than their reach, what are things that you get excited about, and maybe some more important things to stay away from?
Yeah. So aside from reach and engagement rate, I think it's important to understand the niche audiences that follow that influencer, and that's actually someone or a subset of the target market that you're trying to address. And then, we've talked a lot about brand reputation in this call today. I think being able to understand like what they stand for, are the values aligned with your brand? It doesn't matter if they have millions and millions of followers and high likes, comments. Not a fit for you. If that's not a fit for your brand, the commitments that your brand has made, then step away. Walk away, because yes, it will be that. I guess we were talking about quality over quantity at the very beginning of this call, but looping back into that here, at the end of the day, that'll be a short-term play. Yes, you'll get growth and engagement and like traffic to site right away, but in the long term, you don't want to be associated to someone who is flipping on their values at every dime. So I would say stay away from that. And then it's also exciting to get away from the typical influencer sphere that you've consistently worked with. Again, based on, as with Elevate, as we're trying to move away and bring, a lot more diverse voices into our platforms and into like our channels, I would say, make a conscious effort to move away from like the handful of influencers that are always your go-tos and test into new. Yes, they might, let's say in certain instances, be smaller, but that niche following, or whether they're like macro or nano influencers that you're testing into first, they might have a really, really engaged audience and just really excited that your brand is partnering with someone new. So I would go ahead and test that out. Just in the current climate and the current context, like it's good to be able to diversify beyond like what's always been tried and true.
Mm-hmm. I think that's so important that content creators kind of serve as multiple faces of the brand. So making sure they're authentic and consistently aligning with your message, and especially as we head into an extremely political time, we've had a lot of changeover this year, making sure that they're brand safe and they're aligning with your messaging as you continue to move forward into 2021 is extremely important.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. The next question we have is, how do you balance all of the fashion brands that you carry? How do you give them proper attention?
Yeah. So we tend to not lean into specific brand pieces of content. If you look at all of our marketing channels, whether that's, in our ads and growth, or whether you're receiving emails from us and then down to social, we tend for it not to be only brand specific, but rather trend specific, knowing that we are, a personalized or a personal, styling service that's tailored to you. It doesn't mean that a certain brand or designer fits or is tailored to your preference. So it doesn't mean that you'll be served up with that piece of a designer content or brand content, but rather we go from a trend basis. So if you love, long sleeve fall paisley dresses that's trending this season, what I receive in will be completely different from what Courtney receives in her fix, based on what people have put in as like price point, designer that you love, styles that you love. So we tend to not lean into only brands, but again, ensuring it's like a so that we'll both receive a paisley fall dress that we love, but at the price points that matches our preferences, and that the sizing and designer or brand preferences that we've also put in into the Stitch Fix platform.
We have a lot of questions, so I want to make sure I get to all of them. This is a very interesting one. It says, what can heritage brands learn from newer digital-first brands when it comes to authentically marketing to Gen Z?
Yeah, I think authentically connecting to Gen Z is meet your audiences where they are. We know that, for example, TikTok is a place where there's quick turn, unpolished, just real content. And if that, especially for more heritage brands, and I've worked at a bunch of heritage brands too, but understanding that glossy and perfected look and finish from an advertising standpoint or marketing standpoint, yes, it has worked in the past, but Gen Z is not looking for that. They're looking for something that's real, something that's genuine, and something that's timely. So being able to pivot and test and learn, again, if you're a marketer and you're working within a heritage brand, I think I would start with like, hey, let me test into this. Let me gauge performance. Let me see what's resonating on TikTok and show you why this piece of content has to be this way and not, highly polished in studio photoshopped. So just meeting your audiences where they are, and especially Gen Z, understanding the insights and the data that is available to us that showcases these are the consumer preferences. This is the way that they shop. This is the way that they engage with brands now. And so that's not the way that has, historically been with other generations, but Gen Z specifically really resonates with something that feels like if it was user created. They don't want it to be full brand, creative director, polished and whatnot. Precision.
Mm-hmm. And it seems like you guys are much more willing to test and learn, especially around Gen Z. And I think sometimes heritage brands can be a little bit afraid to potentially either explore new platforms or try something that isn't tried and tested. And so I think it's really great to hear that you guys are exploring, places where Gen Z may be, and then really go back to the data and see whether or not it's working.
Yeah, and just to close out on that, the industry has shifted significantly in the last 7 months or so. What we thought we would be at is, from a digital perspective, is probably like 10 or 15 years ahead of time, in the sense that are people going to be coming back in store, back at retailers at the same rate they were in the past, or will they be looking at your digital platforms, how you show up there and how you engage, whether it's digital clothing or gamification or leveraging what feels native technology first and digital first, I think is a way to win there too.
Mm-hmm. I think we have time for one more question. So with multiple marketing initiatives going on at the same time, how do you measure ROI in a specific activity or kind of as a general whole?
Yeah. So for ROI, it's again, specific and dependent to what we laid out the different marketing initiatives to be. As I mentioned before, if we go back to just the streams of work that were influencer based, yes, we have, that handful or that 6 different streams of work. Not all of them have the same objective of driving traffic or driving performance. So being very clear with the objectives from the get-go and being able to understand, okay, this is for brand reputation, this is for PR pushing out, this is for traffic, this is for, channel health and growth and sentiment. Being clear on those objectives from the get-go and understanding how we can optimize on those different streams as we go forward, I think it has been successful for ROI. It's not to say that ROI is always based on, final conversion. There's a lot at play with influencers that is still about, awareness and driving that more top of funnel. So being able to understand what levers to pull and when, and being clear on what the KPIs are, that's where you're going to see your ROI grow most, when you can optimize on each and understand that not all tactics are created equal.
Okay. I think Chris is going to be jumping back on to wrap things up.
Here I am. Well, thank you guys. That was a wonderful session. Angelique, again, thank you. You saved us at the last minute, came in and gave a bang-up job performance. We really appreciate it. And this was Courtney's first time being a moderator. She did a fantastic job. So thank you guys both so much.
Thanks so much again for having me. It was a pleasure.
Okay. Take